Thanks, Eric. Thanks, everyone, for being in attendance, and for those of you at home in your PJs, thanks for tuning in. Anyways, I am the President and CEO of Pacific Ridge Exploration. We are focused on copper-gold projects in BC, and in fact, our goal is to become BC's leading copper-gold exploration company. We embarked on this journey in January 2020 with the acquisition of Kliyul and Regent from Centerra, and since that time, we've acquired 3 more copper-gold projects. We launched our first ever drill program at Kliyul last year, and as Eric was saying, based on the success of that program, we launched a much larger exploration program this year. And we also optioned out one of our projects to Antofagasta, one of the world's largest copper miner companies, and they just completed a 1,891 meter drill program at RDP. So it's been a busy couple years, and I'm looking forward to even more activity moving forward. Forward-looking statements, that's the name of the game. So why Pacific Ridge? As I mentioned, our goal is to become BC's leading copper-gold exploration company. We have a very strong management and technical team, and unfortunately there isn't just enough time to really talk about the technical team, but for a company of our size, I think we've attracted and built one of the strongest technical teams around, comprised of various experts, whether they're geophysical experts or porphyry experts, etc. We did, as I mentioned, acquire Kliyul in January 2020. We didn't drill it that year. Our first ever drill program was last year in 2021. It was a small program, about 1,500 meters. There were a lot of problems that year. I mean, forest fires were a big issue last year. We learned a lot from last year's program, and this year's program has been far more successful. So last year we completed about 1,500 meters. This year we announced a 6,000 meter drill program, but we're ahead of budget, we're ahead of schedule. And because we have a relatively short exploration season, kind of, June to end of September, we actually approached our 2 largest shareholders, Delphi, a German fund, and Crescat, to see if they might like to fund some additional drilling meters this year. They agreed to that, so we've increased the size of the program from 6,000 meters to 6,800 meters. We're just starting our last hole right now. It's an 800 meter drill hole that was put together by our technical team and Quentin Hanna, one of the technical advisors, or now a partner of Crescat Capital. So we're approaching the end of the program, but I am expecting initial drill results in October. We have blacked out the first 6 drill holes, so we don't know what the results are, but we are expecting them in October. So results are just around the corner for the first 6 drill holes from Kliyul. And Antofagasta just completed that 1,800 meter drill program at RDP. And again, that was an increase. So they had funded a 1,500 meter drill program, but there was some budget left, so we were able to increase it to 1,891 meters. We announced last week that one of the holes intersected a significant zone of bornite chalcopyrite mineralization. So these are your copper sulfides. So I'm quite certain we're going to see one very interesting hole from RDP. But the goal for RDP is different since we've optioned that out to Antofagasta. My goal this year for Kliyul is to demonstrate that it has the size potential. I believe it has the grade, and you can see the grade right there. It's pretty significant. Now we need to demonstrate it has the size because it hasn't seen that much drilling. RDP, the goal is just to continue to generate the sort of results that's going to encourage Antofagasta to continue to spend money. And that means if they spend $10 million over 8 years, they can get a 75% interest. So it's been a very busy year. It's in fact the busiest exploration year for Pacific Ridge ever. Right now we're trading about 31 cents. Our 52-week high-low is 10 cents and 58 cents. We've held up reasonably well. I think all of us here know that really, if you looked, my cutoff date is kind of April 1. Since April 1, it's just been awful out there. We've performed relatively well. We've been kind of flat since then, versus a lot of our peers are down 40 to 60%. So we've maintained our ground, and that's largely based on the fact that we have been very aggressive. We have a very busy drill program at Kliyul and a partner-funded program at Antofagasta, and now people are waiting for results, which are just right around the corner. I mentioned our largest shareholders. Delphi, a German fund, owns about 14%, and Crescat out of the US owns about 19%. And then there's some smaller funds and institutions that own about 6%. Market cap today about $25 million. You know, I mentioned that we decided to pivot to copper gold or copper porphyry projects in BC in January 2020, but Pacific Ridge has a long history. It was actually founded by one of my mentors, John Brock, in 1979. And its legacy has been the Yukon, so we still have a number of Yukon gold projects. One of the projects called Fire Lake is farmed out to BMC. They have a final $850,000 payment to make this year to acquire it 100%. We have a number of other gold projects in the Yukon. They're not a focus of ours, so they're orphaned. So what I'd like to do at some point in the future is spin them out into a new co, but I don't think they're strong enough to stand on their own. So we are looking for another advanced stage gold project that we could bolt these assets onto and then spin out, and shareholders would receive some ownership in that company and leave Pacific Ridge focused on its primary goal, which is copper gold porphyry projects in BC. There we go. So we're in the Quesnel Trough. It's a prolific porphyry district. We're about 350 kilometers northwest of Prince George as far as the crows flies. And this Quesnel Trough extends all the way to the U.S. border where you might have Kodiak Copper's MPD. So you have Mount Milligan mine to the south. You have the Chemist mine, which we're pretty close to. Chemist South was mined out, and now there's a deposit, Chemist North. So all of those are held by Centerra. There's a lot of activity to the north of us with Benchmark. You have an interesting deal with A-Mark. Freeport just announced a big spend to earn into a 70% interest. To the south, we have our Redton, which is immediately adjacent to Quanica and Stardust. And then we recently acquired Chuchi and Onho, which are in close proximity to Mount Milligan. So when you look at our assets, I think it's safe to say how you want to look at them as separate business units. Kliyul and RDP work well together. Then to the south, Redton, Chuchi, Onho, they're all road accessible. They're earlier stage, so as I mentioned, we are drilling Kliyul right now. Antofagasta just finished RDP, but we also did just complete ZTEM surveys at Chuchi and Onho to get them ready for drilling. And then it's really a question, are these projects we will drill or we will look for partners? So a lot of that will be based on continued exploration success at Kliyul and RDP. Quickly running out of time. Anyways, infrastructure. So while not as good as the Buck property, it's not awful for some projects in BC. We're just about 5 kilometers off the Ominika Mining Road that serves Chemist to the north. There's adjacent power. So what we do right now, we stage at Johansson Lake and we take a short helicopter ride up into the Alpine. Why we really liked it? I mean, geologically similar to a lot of these other copper, gold, porphyry deposits mines in BC. When we acquired this in January 2020, it had seen only a limited amount of drilling, and of those 33 drill holes, only 6 were deep enough to get into the porphyry. So the first hole that it intercepted the porphyry system was by Geoinformatics in 2006. They drilled 2 holes. Teck did 4 holes in 2015, and up until we drilled it, that was the best intercept ever returned from Kliyul. Our program last year, as mentioned, was short but very successful. We returned the best intercepts to date as far as grade and length, and really set the stage now for a much larger drill program this year. And the hopes are obviously that if we can continue to report similar widths and grades and expand the mineralized footprint, we'll look to get back there again with an even bigger program next year. And of course, at the Kliyul, there's a number of other targets where we completed some IP at Ginger, M39, and Back Ridge. So again, in addition to the Kliyul main zone where all the drilling has been focused, there's a number of other targets that occur along a 4-kilometer long mineralized trend that we're also advancing and will look to drill at some point in the future. This is probably my favorite slide. It's very boring. It's just numbers, but it really sort of indicates why we think this is going to be successful. If you look at the bottom, we're showing just a sample of some of the holes that got into the porphyry system. And if you look at the copper values and the gold values and you compare them to some of these other deposits and mines in BC that we feel we're similar to, it compares quite favorably. Similar copper values, but even higher gold values. So overall, a higher copper equivalent or a higher gold equivalent. So I think the grades work. Now it's a matter of size. And this is how we get there. So this was an IP survey we completed in 2020. When you're looking at the sort of tonnage that I think might be required here, I think at a minimum you need 250 million tons. The footprint for that is pretty small, about 600 meters by 500 meters to 350 meters in depth. I think we have the depth profile. Now we need to show that we can extend it along strike, and that's really part of the goal of this year's program. We're completing about 12 holes this year. About 75% of those holes will be drilled in the Kliyul main zone, and the remainder holes pushing out. And I'm just about to finish up here because I have run out of time. Anyway, stop by the booth if you want more. There's a lot to talk about, and I haven't done it justice, but suffice to say, it's been a very, very busy year. We've got a lot of news to report, and it's going to be starting up next month. Thank you.